Ready? Play.
My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Sammaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Well, hello there, and welcome to WTA Weekly. And I'm very pleased to be joined by Vanch, who I always have a good time with, and I feel it's deeply appropriate to do this show with you, given that you gave us such an excellent preview of the Rome final just before it happened.
Yeah, thank you. Always love doing this with you, Nick. And there's quite a lot of good storylines leading up to Roland Garros to talk about today, and Rome, of course.
Yeah, definitely a few. Well, let's say we've got a few storylines. I think it's interesting the state the WTA is in, where there's definitely a few big names that will be getting most of the attention going into Roland Garros in a way that has been developing over the last few years. But I think now is very much entrenched, to be honest. So that's going to be very interesting to look at. And obviously there'll be other stories unfolding over the course of the week as well. But let's back at the week that was, and let's talk about the Rome match and Rome tournament. But I think we have to start with the final and work backwards as we usually do. As Iga Swiatek beat Aryna Sabalenka in a more straightforward match than we were expecting.
Yes, indeed. I think coming into it, I was sort of expecting a tight two-setter, maybe something where I knew Iga would have the edge in terms of, the fact that it is slow clay. And also I feel like she would have been hard to hit through, especially with her really great defense, how well she'd been playing all week. Sabalenka, maybe some physical fatigue, some question marks there with having come through so many physical matches. And, so, such a tough ask for her to repeat that again in such a game version of Iga. But I thought, the second set was a little bit more competitive, certainly up until at least the first 7 or 8 games. Sabalenka had those 7 break points, which the story of the match is really how clutch Iga was on many of those occasions, saving break points, how much her serve was able to bail her out of trouble, and then just how error-free she remained from the baseline, and just how razor-tight she kept her whole game in general, and how well she was defending and serving and returning. And it was just such a complete performance from her, I thought.
It was a very, very good performance. I don't think she did much wrong. I mean, I commentated on the first set of that match, and I found it very weird seeing how in control of that set she was. Like, she was well in Sabalenka's service games.
Yeah.
And she was getting through her own without much trouble, with how, despite the fact her first serve percentage was in the 40s. And I think it did creep up as the match went on. But that was something that I was like, this is interesting. And I think James and Biola and I were talking about this, how, there's been a lot of conversations about Swiatek's serve, and, maybe that's what part of the game that needs work on. But I think this match highlighted what is actually good about her serve, in that it can, get her out of trouble, and like in super clutch moments, how clutch she is with that shot, but also how the base game is so strong that she can work around this serve.
Yeah, I think that was the story because the first set she served 39% first serves in, but when she was getting it in, it was very effective. She was getting it into the body, or she was able to set up a +1 forehand, or just kind of maneuver Sabalenka around the court. And she won, I think, 90% of her points on the first serve, something like that. With those 39% first serves in, and her second serve was there for her when she needs it. It's a really good kick serve. I didn't think Sabalenka was able to attack much right from the get-go on it. And then that just put Iga in such a great position, from the baseline, where I feel like she really didn't have to go for lines as much. She didn't really have to. She wasn't really under the gun in some of those, like, let's say, Raducanu matches where she's just really having to fight in terms of the serve and return dynamic. I felt like she was able to play much more measured, controlled tennis, and she looked comfortable and confident out there.
She really did. And actually, the key note I had, because I was trying to work out what the story of the match was, because it was interesting to watch, because it kind of played out in the way that you expected, with Sabalenka struggling to hit through in the same way in Rome and the conditions that play out in Rome compared to Madrid. Yeah. And yeah, it kind of played out how you described in the preview almost. Swiatek just seemed to have an answer for everything Sabalenka threw at her, even when Sabalenka was up and putting the pressure on, and she was starting to get, and like she was in periods where she was really firing. Swiatek's defense could soak it up. She could open up court. The backhand was producing some special shots. The forehand, she didn't feel, I could tell that she was just feeling comfortable with it and didn't need to go for everything on it. Maybe she wasn't feeling good and maybe she worked around it. I don't know. But regardless of, like, she used the tools she had so well in that match.
Yeah, and then also on Sabalenka's side of the net, I was curious to see how the variety that she had been showing throughout the course of the whole week, when it comes to like her drop shots, she was playing with a lot more feel and finesse than we're generally used to seeing. She's certainly capable of it. She's done it in moments in her career, but generally her go-to is to always go big, hit big, bother people with their pace off both wings, and just dominate. And like from the middle of the court, so many times this week, she was pulling out a backhand drop shot. She was coming in, closing at net. She was just giving her opponents a little something different at times. And I thought, how is that going to work against Iga? Is she going to be able to hit behind Iga? Is she going to be able to use some more angles? Is she going to use the backhand drop shot as a finishing shot? Because it makes sense with Sabalenka, right? Because she has such a heavy shot, and she can pull her opponent so far behind the baseline that why not have an extra option on, at your disposal? She only tried it twice this whole match, and it actually worked both times. One off of forehand attacking drop shot and one on a backhand. And then there was another sort of like defensive squash shot that she hit in the early part of the second set, and that also worked. But it was so hard for her to find that moments to do it, because Iga's weight of shot is so big. It was pushing Sabalenka back, and I felt like just the balance of power was always in Arena's, was not in Arena's hands here when it came to actually using the drop shot as effectively. Like, she was doing it a lot against Ostapenko, against Collins, even at times against Svitolina, but against Iga, she was having to move and run and defend like she hadn't all week.
Yeah, like definitely, I think Sabalenka was able to dictate a lot against every opponent apart from maybe Svitolina. But here, this just wasn't happening. And it wasn't like Sabalenka was doing a lot wrong. I mean, she didn't hit that. I don't think she hit that many unforced errors in the match. Not certainly on the first set. The first set, I think, was only like 11 according to WTA. Now, I know it's very subjective, but I certainly didn't see too many balls from Sabalenka where I was like, oh, yeah, she's kind of giving this to Iga.
Yeah, especially the first set. I think the second set, the numbers started to go up a little higher, especially after 4-3. That's when it looked like, okay, maybe the wheels are starting to come off finally, which I guess would make sense because, she got a little frustrated after she couldn't convert one of those chances. But I think ultimately Iga got her to that situation where it was just going to be too much for her. But yeah, the first set I didn't think was more about Sabalenka's errors. It was more just about Iga's really great margin for error.
Is that image? Has someone photoshopped her physio in, or is it just a weird angle that someone...
I saw this. She posted this yesterday on her.
So she's gone, oh, he's not in the photo. I'll Photoshop him in because it looks like I made an effort.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it. It
Um,
looks photoshopped for sure. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, third Rome trophy for Iga that she's holding right there. The last time she lost a completed match in Rome was 2020, just before she won that first slam and started becoming the player that we recognize. I think that was the last time that she lost to someone that you wouldn't expect her to lose to now in Aranha Rus. No offense to Rus, but they're just sort of the caliber of player that's sort of been here in the last sort of 3-4 years has been very different. But do you think that Rome is maybe the ultimate barometer for her form?
Yeah, I mean, also the fact that she won Madrid this year, I mean, that just felt like the pressure was off her shoulders in a big way. That even if she lost in the quarters or semis, I think it like sort of freed her up. I don't think she was playing with a ton of pressure or expectations the whole week, and she just looked pretty calm and confident. She wasn't overthinking things. Rome, like you said, is a great venue for her. Like it's just, it's no surprise that she has the most clay titles here, like tied with the French Open, of course. And yeah, I mean, that like Rome, along with Indian Wells, along with Doha, like these seem to be like her best 1000s right now, and seems like she can win more of these in the upcoming years.
Yeah, because the reason why I say barometer is excluding 2020, because that was kind of a weird. Well, that loss kind of kick-started something in Iga. Like she said that since, but like you look at 2021, she kind of scrapped her way to the final. I know she famously double bageled Pliskova in that final, but she had to get out of trouble against Krejcikova to get there, and then she had like that Roland Garros wasn't hers. The 2022
she had to play the quarters and semis on the same day. I remember that. That was
yeah.
Yeah.
Then 2022, which Iga won fairly comfortably. Roland Garros has won fairly comfortably. 2023, she has to retire against Raducanu in a tough match, and then Roland Garros was not an easy run for her compared to previous Roland Garros titles. In the end, like she was pushed by a couple of different players, and then famously, obviously, Mukova got under her skin in the final. So I don't know what that says, but that's kind of where I've kind of picked up the pattern from.
Yeah, for sure. And like usually the first 3-4 rounds of Roland Garros, she's looked really good in previous years. I think the fourth round maybe could be one where you might see her pushed a little bit more, like we saw against Junction Wen a couple of years ago. But from then on, like I think the best part about Iga in terms of how she's able to play her best in these finals is she's just so efficient throughout the whole week that she just seems to have a lot more left in the tank for the finals, and that's why she's so good in them. 21-4 record is just really good. I think she's won her last 8 in a row now as well. So yeah.
Wow, was that 1000 finals?
Yeah, 1000. Yeah, she's won 10 now in
a row.
Well, finals, yeah, crazy.
Or 10 total, or 10 in a row. No, 10 in a row, yeah.
Yeah, 10 titles and 12 finals. I guess the only two people who have beaten her is the Sabalenka in Madrid last year in 2023, and then Dubai as well, Krejcikova. But yeah, she's now won 5 of the last 7 1000s. So it's kind of a comparable run to the first half of 2022. If she wins Roland Garros, this might be even more impressive for sure. Like from Beijing onwards.
I don't know if I'm going to have to look back through, and obviously history is very different. The clay landscape was very different in history, but that might be the most dominant clay seasons anyone has ever had.
Right.
On the women's side. Not obviously if you're comparing to Nadal, no, but on the women, I would have to look it up.
I think Serena did Madrid, Rome, and Roland.
Yeah, no, she did. You're right. Madrid, Serena in 2013. Yeah.
So that would equal that for sure.
Yeah. Oh, she's celebrating with tiramisu again. Serena. Yeah, you're right. That was Serena's incredible clay court season. I don't know why I forgot that, but anyway, maybe it's more of a that was kind of a one-off for Serena, and then sort of her clay. Like she usually won at least one clay tournament a year after that. So yeah, I mean, it's comparable. It's comparable. I guess with this though, So I want to get your thoughts on this. Going into the final, like before the final, my view was Iga is the favourite for Roland Garros, regardless of the outcome, but she wasn't going to be as clear a favourite as she has been in recent years because Sabalenka and Rabat are in the mix and they've been pushing her hard on clay in Stuttgart and in Madrid. And then the final happened in conditions that are much more similar to Roland Garros. And Iga had an answer for everything that Sabalenka threw at her. And then that just made me think, okay, no, maybe the gap's a bit bigger than I thought, but I don't know. I want to know, this is the question. Is she as clear a favourite for Roland Garros compared to recent years?
I think so. Even compared to last year, I think she looks like a considerable favorite. Like I was talking with Damien yesterday, and we were wondering, is she a favorite versus the rest of the field? And we both said yes. Like, do we take the whole field or do we take Iga? And right now, I'd probably take Iga by it's like maybe a 55-45. But I really do think she's separating herself quite a bit on slow clay, particularly the Rome final kind of showed it. But also, like, she's not going to play Sabalenka until the final, right? So, it would probably have to take somebody like just have an absolute peak performance, like a Danielle Collins, just like totally on a mission, or like a Yelena Ostapenko, like, or like some kind of a, player coming through qualies and just completely like just surprising Iga in her tracks. But like, I just don't really see it. I think it's hers to lose this Roland Garros. I feel really good about like where she is, like mentally, physically as well. Like last year, there were some more question marks for sure. There was also the physical question of like after the leg injury, how was she gonna, recover quickly in time, and then you also had like the Mukova was up in the third set. She was up a break. That looked a little dicey for a while, and second set against Haddad Maya, she was pushed, so she certainly had to really earn that. I mean, that was not an easy Roland Garros for her to win, but. And then 2022, she had the scare against Zhang, but for the most part, apart from that, I think she looked like she was going to win it for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So not too different. So yeah, there's someone out there, like it's not unheard of that someone could upset her, but they're going to have to have an amazing.
Of course, there's a lot of pressure as well, coming in and like just knowing that like anything less than a title is kind of going to be disappointing in her. Really,
because I think if she wins this, she's going to pretty much put the world #1 ranking for her safe for quite some time.
Yeah, like I think she has over 11,500 points right now, and she's just so far ahead of Sabalenka number 2.
I don't think Sabalenka can overtake it, even if Iga goes out first round.
Yeah, it looks like it's at least safe until like Berlin or Wimbledon at this point.
Yeah. And then it depends on other people's results and like, but if Iga defends Roland Garros, like if Sabalenka made the final, she's not going to gain that many points as compared to a semi-final. So it might put some pressure on, but I think it would make, given how the rest of the season goes, I don't think we'd be looking at the Asian swing before there was a kind of significant risk for Iga in losing that ranking.
Yeah.
This is if she defends the title, obviously, which I think, there would be it would cause ripples if she didn't in so many ways. But I suppose that's probably what a lot of people want, and I don't blame you in some respects. I want to ask you this question: what do you think would be the most interesting draw for Roland Garros in terms of where Gauff and Raducanu place in the draw? Because on the one hand, you could have the most balanced semi-finals possible, which is Swiatek and Raducanu, and then Gauff Sabalenka. But then if you think about the potential outcomes from that, you could end up being then you could end up with a final that seems fairly straightforward on paper. Or would it be you are guaranteed Swiatek plays at least Sabalenka or Raducanu in the final the other way?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I'm sure Coco would like her chances better against the other two than Iga for sure. So from her point of view, she would want, she would want either she would probably want another crack at Sabalenka, especially after Australia. And
I would give Gauff a good shout against Sabalenka on Roland Garros, by the way.
yeah. So and then Iga like against Raducanu, that would also be interesting because of the match in Stuttgart and also the match she was winning in Rome, and then the injury happened last year. So in some ways, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it would be. Maybe you're right. Yeah, maybe it would be interesting if it was Iga and Coco in the semis again, and then in the final. I think as long as you're guaranteed, a match. I like the way it was in these couple of tournaments because it was like you knew Iga played first, and if she won, then she'd play either Raducanu or Sabalenka in the final. So there was that guarantee. But yeah, I don't know. Like Raducanu at Roland Garros, she's coming in with some question marks as well, right? Because of the illness in Rome, and last year she had to pull out in the third round, I believe, because of COVID or something. It was COVID, right? I think so.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I think it was COVID. It was definitely some kind of illness. No, but was that the US Open? I can't remember.
So yeah, US Open she lost to Kirstea in the third round. But
she could beat match, yeah.
Yeah, it was a walkover against Sorribes Tormo. But yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't think I really have a preference either way. But she probably has to. You would think have to be one of Raducanu and Sabalenka either way to get the title in the end.
Yeah, that makes sense. Michael, by the way, I saw was asking in the chat for the live version of the broadcast. Would Gauff become world number 2 if she won Roland Garros? I think she would, yes. I think regardless of how Sabalenka did, I think that would be right.
Yeah, because there's only 500 points separating them right now. So yeah, if she won it, then
gap between winning and losing the final.
Right. Yeah. So in that sense, yeah, even if Sabalenka got to the final, but Coco beat her in the final, then yeah, she would be number 1 or number 2.
Yeah, so number 2 for Gauff, which she had. I think possibly she may have missed her best chance of getting that ranking short of Sabalenka having a horrific Roland Garros.
Yeah, I mean, if she had lost to Svitolina, if Sabalenka had lost to Svitolina, she probably would have, and Coco still made the semis, she would have been even closer, or probably have gotten it already. And then in Madrid, she was very close as well because the Collins Sabalenka match was pretty tight as well, and then Coco was up 4-2 against Keys, and then played kind of a poor 4 games to lose that. So it's been awfully really close. But Sabalenka has actually come through clutch on many big occasions in Madrid and Rome. So it feels right that she's number 2. She definitely, on paper and eye test wise, it makes sense.
I do want to talk more about Sabalenka and Gauff actually. I guess with Sabalenka, I want to talk a bit about how we see her as a player, because a lot of the narrative from Rome was, oh, look, she's playing drop shots, or, oh, look. I think that was mainly the main thing for it. Oh, look, we've got some variety in defense in there. And I guess there's a couple of things to unpack from that. But do you think we've oversimplified her game, that we've been surprised to see this?
I don't know if I was necessarily surprised. I was more just intrigued, I was just more like, okay, cool. She's shown it in the past. I've seen her, in some matches, even against Raducanu, on the stretch on the defense. Maybe once in a while you see a few cat and mouse points. She's a very good doubles player as well, so it doesn't surprise me that, when she does hit some good volleys, or when she comes up, when she does change things up, she has to just be in a calm state of mind, I think, to and feel like she's in a comfortable position, either on the scoreboard or that she can fall back on her heavy power, when it doesn't work. So it's just that against Iga, it was just so hard for her to get in that position where she could trust it. And then I guess when you're tight, when you're nervous, when you're in need for, winning a really crucial point, you're probably going to go back to what you're most comfortable with. You're probably going to revert to your default way of playing. So
there were points where she was using the drop shot, and the first couple she did worked really well. But then Iga started catching up to it, and as you say, arena got tight.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I think. Do you think that what we've been seeing in recent years? I know this sounds weird, given she's a 2-time Madrid champion, but is this a sign of Sabalenka's progress as a player, that we are seeing her playing much more confidently on more traditional clay?
I think so, right? I mean, before we had only seen her in Rome. She made the semis in 2022, and then last year, like Roland Garros, she was so close to the final. So I think, and then this time around, the fact that she backed up her Madrid run and got to the final without feeling her best in Rome is a good sign. That means that and she's on this six Grand Slam semifinal win streak. So she's pretty much showing up for all the big events now on all surfaces. So I think, I'm expecting her to go pretty deep in RG. I think that's where she's headed.
If nothing else, because she's got a crazy semi-final streak going.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of comments on Twitter that I don't agree with, but I wanted to get your opinion on. I've seen a couple of people say that they believe that Raducanu would have pushed Swiatek more in that final.
Maybe it depends what they mean by more. Maybe it's possible that they could have pushed her a little bit more. But to be honest, I feel like it would have gone a similar type of way, where I feel like Iga would have been so much more harder to rush on these courts. Her serve was more effective. I feel like her defense, her athleticism, the things that she's really good at, like this court is really ideal for a lot of that. So, and that was the case when Raducanu played her last year in Rome as well. 6-2, 4-2 up. I felt like it was going kind of similar to the Sabalenka match. And then Raducanu was able to get back into it. Iga got hurt on the leg. So I don't know. I kind of feel like Iga would have still been the favorite and probably still would have pulled through. That's my feeling on it. Stuttgart is a very different type of play. It's indoors as well. Indoors is a huge, factor that would favor Raducanu in that kind of matchup. So I wasn't too surprised when Raducanu beat her in Stuttgart, but in Rome it would have taken more for sure.
Yeah, and I think Sabalenka's got the level in her, and as we talked about, the clay level to do that potentially on the right day, but it has to be the right day to beat Swiatek on this surface right now. So I think despite maybe the manner of the loss, positives for Sabalenka coming out of that match. And actually, most of that second set was kind of showed everything about what we love about the Sabalenka-Swiatek rivalry, right?
Yeah, the second set was a lot of fun to watch, especially the first 4 or 5 games. I always feel like with this matchup, even the one-sided matches have been very good quality tennis from both players, where either the score hasn't told the full picture, or they're both just playing really high octane, really high intensity tennis at the same time, just trading blows from the baseline, and they both have such heavy power. So for me, it's my favorite of these 3 rivalries to watch, between Sabalenka, Raducanu, Iga, and Sabalenka, Iga. I find Sabalenka, Iga the most entertaining as a viewer.
Yeah, I think you're right. Even the straight sets matches have been good. I mean, I'm thinking about that Cancun semi they played. It was very similar to this in a lot of respects. There was some really good stuff in there. But on that day, Iga was just that little bit better. It does feel a little bit odd in some ways, given how good their how watchable that rivalry is, that the head-to-head is now 8-3.
I know 8-3 is a really good score for Iga in this matchup. If they played another 11 more times, 8-3 is that's the best I could see it. That's Sabalenka's won 3 setters against her. They've usually been indoors, altitude clay in Madrid, favorable conditions for her, but she's never actually beaten Iga in straights. And I guess there were some in that period where Sabalenka wasn't at her best for sure, 2022. Where she was still struggling a little bit with her service yips. But just the fact that they played 11 times already in 2.5 years, that speaks well for both of them in terms of their consistency. We haven't seen them play on grass yet. That would be kind of fun to watch as well.
I feel like that might be the first time Sabalenka beats Iga in straights.
Maybe, yeah, for sure. although I was impressed with Swiatek, a little bit of progress that she made on grass last year, it certainly seemed like she could have another deep run in Wimbledon again.
I certainly believe that based on what I saw last year. And, again, the world-class players, they figure this stuff out. And, she won Junior Wimbledon for a reason. The players she may have met may not necessarily be kind of the same as she's playing now. But I certainly will never rule Swiatek out as a contender at Wimbledon.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if she ends her career without having won Wimbledon, for sure. She definitely has at least one, maybe two Wimbledons in her.
Do you think she's on the trajectory to end her career with a career slam?
I think so. I think she's that good. Yeah, I could see her doing all four. I think Australian Open might actually be the hardest one to do. Just the speed of the surface, early part of the year, United Cup before that, or that it seems like for whatever reason she's not able to find her best rhythm there. That hasn't really felt her best. So that seems like it could be the hardest one.
Yeah, I mean, actually, this is a question that I've seen talked about a bit among the Swiatek fandom. Is Iga's... I mean, some might say that Iga doesn't have a weakness and she just has bad days. But is maybe her weaker conditions to do with the speed or to do with the height? Which is more of a factor of the ball bounce?
I think it might be the height of the bounce is important, but I think it's just the speed at which it's coming at her. The speed at which it's played. I think of all the courts or all the conditions where she's had a tougher time kind of controlling her forehand wing, right? Because she has a bigger swing. As great of an offensive weapon as it is, she defends much better on her backhand because she absorbs pace better with it. The take back is shorter. It's better at just resetting rallies, whereas the forehand, that's a shot that you can rush, particularly on the first strike, especially if it is in the big hitter strike zone and they are just sort of teeing off at a really high level. Then that is one area you could definitely expose from Swiatek. But I don't know. I mean, most of the courts, the bounce, I feel like she's pretty good at hip level. She's pretty good shoulder height. But if she's having to just react to a forehand and try to get it back with interest and compete with the big hitters, that's where Cincinnati or a really fast hard court is probably the place where in Australia when she lost to Rabat, for instance, really fast conditions, or even this year against Noshkova, a really flat big hitter, like Miami and Alexandrova, but I don't know, those are still losses after a period of really good success, or where she's having to play back to back. I didn't feel like that loss was really too bad, in Miami, because she'd already won in New Wells.
Would you say Stuttgart's got quite a low bounce for a clay court?
Yeah, because it's indoors, it skids a little bit more, it's thicker, so that certainly could be it. But she's won it twice.
That's more what I was going for in your what you're saying.
I think over time we might see her Madrid and Stuttgart results kind of even out. We might see her have more success in Madrid and Stuttgart, where she could be prone to an early loss. It is also the first clay tournament after Sunshine Double,
I mean, feel free to throw some other names in the mix, but I think of the current players, Iga is probably the best at playing from shoulder height. Which I think that's when the ball kicks up like that on any court, that's something that most players struggle with. But Iga seems to find a way of compensating for it better than most.
Yeah, and that's because of her footwork. So she's able to get in really good position to feel like she can contact it at a comfortable height and not let it get up too high on her. I mean, perfect example is in Madrid, Sabalenka's second serve, I didn't feel like she was having a lot of success with her kick serve. I thought Swiatek was even having more success with it than Sabalenka was, which is, Sabalenka has 3 or 4 more inches on Iga, but I feel like she was so comfortable taking that backhand return really early and on the rise. And that's one of her best strengths. And then the forehand when she has time, then she spreads the court so well with it from the center of the court. So you feel like she's, because of her footwork and because of how quick she is, just how fast she is with her feet, she's able to get herself in really optimal position most of the time, especially when the conditions are slower, for sure.
Yeah, but that this is a tangent I've worked through. But like, yeah, if you're a good person to talk about these things that like thinking about with and the kind of discussions I see, and like I'm not an expert. I'm not saying necessarily you are either, but you have actually tried to do this before. So obviously Statman Vanch is what you're known for, but that's a good one. So yeah, I think maybe some people might be wanting us to move on from Iga at some point. So maybe we should move back to Coco Gauff.
Yeah, and also just one more thing, like it does take a huge level to beat Iga. So like all these, I'm talking about the conditions, but like they played an amazing match. Like you go watch Alexandrova in Miami. I mean, she just took the racket out of Iga's hands. It was just like tremendous stuff, you know. So sometimes you just do run into players like that on a given day that, like Alexandrova can be a problem at her very, very best for a lot of players, not just Iga. So
I don't think I've watched a Swiatek loss where her opponent hasn't played an incredible level.
Yeah.
At least not in the post, not since Iga became a Grand Slam champion.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Coco Gauff. Would you say that this Rome event has been the best tournament for her since the Australian Open?
Yes, I would. I would say she was hitting her forehand better than she has the whole time since Australia, particularly the Junction Wen match. That was maybe the best match she's played since then. The forehand was a lot more consistent, a lot more stable. She was hitting through it a lot more, not necessarily like going with the loopier higher balls to set up her backhand, but like actually like flattening it out, like trying to really go hard at it with pace. And against Junction Wen, it was actually doing well, you know. For the most part, it held up pretty okay. I think the second serve is still a little bit of a problem. The double fault scraping back in at some big moments. So that is something that she's trying to go for more on her first serve. So as a result, her first serve percentage hasn't been that high. And then sometimes at big moments, we've seen her double fault. But I actually thought against Iga, she came out playing quite big in the beginning. And she had a game point for 3-love. It looked like, okay, we were going to get a more competitive match. And it was like that for the most part. I think it was one of her better matches against Iga in the rivalry for sure. Maybe top 2 or 3. She's still pretty far away. So that tells you that, you know, it's a pretty brutal matchup for her. But still, like, if she continues to go after her forehand like this, that's probably a better way of playing, you know, these bigger matches. But the serve, you know, that was that let her down in some moments, like a couple of double faults in the 4-all game. She was up 40-love there. Otherwise, she would have had a good chance of holding 2-love, break point down, double fault. So a few moments like that where the first set, the first 7 or 8 games, she was right there with Iga, but yeah, and also her forehand, you know, is going to come under a lot more scrutiny when she's playing against Iga than most players. That's to be expected. But I think she came into it with a better approach, and yeah, the last couple of years, it's been Iga who's beaten her at Roland Garros. So maybe, you know, if she can get through the first week relatively unscathed, which is not going to be easy because we have seen matches in her where since Australia where, you know, the level does dip all of a sudden or the serving does go down and she's having to fight and scrap her way through a lot of 3-setters. But if that's not necessarily the case, then, you know, maybe this sets herself well up for the second half of the year where she has a ton of points to defend, particularly over the summer, right?
Yes. For sure, and I agree with you that like when she's gone for her forehand, we saw that during the US hardcourt swing that brought her a lot of dividends. The serve has a lot of potential when she really uses it. So, I mean, would you say this is kind of what we've been seeing recently has been growing pains for her?
I think so, right? Like after Australia, yeah, she made the Indian Wells semi, losing to Sakkari in the third set, where Sakkari played really well after, you know, looked like she was going to win in straights. But apart from that, it's been really up and down. Like losing a lot of like pretty close matches. A few times, I feel like the serve has kind of gotten in her head a little bit. She was in a little bit of a mini slump there, but still, it helps that she's winning a lot, even when she's not playing her best. I think it still counts in terms of, you know, like if we compare this version of Coco, this is still her best start of the year that she's ever had in her career. So if we're comparing it to the US Open level, of course, it's not going to be the same. But like it was always going to be hard to sustain that for like a 9-month stretch, you know? So that was more like just a really, really good series of events where she just kept winning and winning and got on a roll. But I don't think that should be like the expectation for her, you know? I think what she's at right now is more of a sort of norm, like 75 to 80% win rate.
Yeah, which is still really good and better than pretty much anyone else on tour, right? I mean, like, I don't know, I can't, off the top of my head, from like what I know, and I appreciate it may have shifted a bit recently, but I'm pretty sure that 70 to 85% win rate is pretty much better than anyone else outside the top four.
Yeah, I mean,
like
except for
Collins
Daniel
in
Collins, yeah.
like last month or two is up there too, but
yeah, except for like her and yeah, pretty much outside of that, I can't really think of anyone else who's. It's pretty much just been those three, and then a little bit of a gap, Coco and Collins, and then like everyone else just kind of has a chance. Depends on the conditions. Zhang wasn't playing her best up until now, but I still think she's one of the top 8 contenders for sure at Roland Garros.
Interesting. That's interesting. I guess with Coco then, with that win rate, do you think her results are underappreciated, given that a lot of the time when I end up having conversations about Coco, they tend to be along the lines of, "Oh, she's not doing that well."
Yeah, I think some people are just kind of like either they're swept up by how she won the US Open, and they're like, how did she win the US Open? Look how she's playing right now. Why is it? I think people are kind of just over devaluing her year because 21-7 coming in is not a bad record at all. That's a 75% win rate, and she was winning a lot of these matches ugly. But before that, she hadn't had a top 20 win. She's gotten that now this week, and she's gotten to the semis. I think the Rome semis, like that was what I was hoping for coming in for Coco, that if she can get to the semis here, I think then she puts herself back in the conversation as far as Roland Garros is concerned. So now that she's in the conversation, I think she's in with a shot. I definitely wouldn't count her out.
No, I wouldn't either. And I'm seeing the chat now, and Sean is looking at giving me stats that I know I wrote about this. I sent an article into Popcorn. I don't think it's going to come out, but I highlighted those stats as well. Like her percentage is higher than Sabalenka in 52 weeks. Which
yeah,
is
post Wimbledon of last year, it makes sense that she was so close to the number 2 ranking because that's how it works. And then basically she was firmly in the top 3 from end of Wimbledon to Australian Open semis, and then since then she's kind of gone down a little bit. But now the Rome semis will help her for sure. And Rome semis, Indian Wells semis, Australian Open semis. It's been a decent year.
Yeah. And it's when I say conversations, it's not when I mention conversations, it's not actually being necessarily with people on Twitter, actually with people on the show, where we've talked about Coco. So I think Damien and I got quite fiery last week at one point, but there was I think that's kind of my perspective is the same as yours in that it's still pretty good. On the whole, what Coco is achieving, and she's producing the kind of results you would expect from someone of her ranking. And yeah, this week in Rome, as you said, has been critical for her because it's showing good signs, and she's definitely a name to watch in Roland Garros. And you would be surprised if she will still be the favorite. Not surprised, she will still be the favorite to get through the draw unless she gets something complete nightmare, like maybe drawing Danielle Collins, who is probably the one person I would say she has to be really scared of right now, given that she's managing to maintain this form she's built up since Miami. I mean, Sabalenka's been the only person to beat her in the last few weeks. Are you impressed she's managed to maintain that?
I am actually, yeah. I mean, I'm impressed. But it's like her last year on tour just released a lot of pressure and expectations that she had, and she's just kind of, swinging big and playing really fearless and just going after it and not really overthinking herself. And she's playing the kind of brand of tennis that's allowing her to problem solve better on the court. It's allowing her to just be in that locked in zone. She's kind of just figured this out in a way that's it's pretty impressive. I thought once the clay court season started, it would cool off a little bit, but it really hasn't. I mean, she's she came through very convincingly against most of the opponents she played this week. I think she eventually hit that wall after 5-all in the first set against Sabalenka. And Sabalenka's pace and power was a bit too much for her, but up until that point, I mean, she was just rolling everyone else. So, and then also she had that sitter forehand to go up 6-4, 5-3 against Sabalenka last time, and then Sabalenka played an amazing level and then was able to stretch it. But like, yeah, I mean, like right now she's in the mix for Roland Garros. She has to be, based on what we've seen the last 2 months.
Yeah, I agree. She has to be. I mean, I think a lot that none of you will know, like you've been following the channel for a bit. Like I usually put a power ranking together before every slam. I think we know which players are going to be in the top 5, and Collins is going to be in there. She's very much in the mix, and I think if she maintains it, she's in the mix for every slam that she plays for the rest of her career, which is looking to be fairly short at this point. I guess from what you're saying, are we currently seeing her ceiling?
I think so. I mean, we're not going to see her play next year, so maybe if she wins the U.S. Open or something, that would be like the ultimate way to go out. But but apart from that, like I am surprised, for instance, that she's just keeping it going and going and going. Like she's playing next week in Strasbourg, hasn't yet withdrawn. So,
do we think she will? I'm expecting her to, but the longer she leaves it, the more we think like we have to accept that maybe she is playing it.
Yeah, maybe she is, but otherwise, I would have expected she would have pulled out already. And like I thought she would pull out of Charleston as well, but then Charleston being so close to Miami, she basically just drove up there and then was able to just carry that momentum. And then I honestly don't know. Like she's just playing beyond herself. It's just we've seen her in the past like sustain it for 1 or 2 tournaments or get to the final of Roland Garros, but like her body is allowing her to compete at a really high level and play more tournaments than she's ever had in her whole career. And yeah, the world is better for it, because Danielle Collins is really captivating right now, and her matches are totally fire.
She's box office tennis right now. I've absolutely loved watching her playing over the last month or so. And
I guess also I feel like more people are getting to know her off the court better, right? Because her off-court personality and on-court personality could not be more different.
I need to listen to the podcast she did with Andy Roddick.
I recommend that. Very, very good listen.
The clips I've seen look so good. Like I'm really interested in that conversation that they have.
Yeah, and like she's so like self-aware. She knows exactly what she wants to do, and she's she breaks so many stereotypes and norms in different ways, but she's comfortable in her own skin, and that really shows. And then off court, she's super nice. And then also like the reception that she's got after she retired, like most of the players really love her. So it's very different. I mean, she's not everyone's cup of tea on court for sure. She doesn't always behave the best way at times, but it's mainly just to fire herself up and the kind of tough atmosphere that she grew up with in college tennis and stuff. So, yeah.
Do you want to answer the questions on the screen right now? I'm going to say this now. I'm not going to answer it because it will spoil the video I'm doing later in the week.
Yeah, I mean, you have to say at this point that Raducanu is still a sort of tougher matchup for her than Sabalenka across all surfaces, but I don't know. I'm tempted to kind of say herself. Like, I don't know. That's not an option, but like, maybe it's just like, yeah, if she just freezes for a minute and just has like a really, like the expectations just sort of get to her. I don't think it will. I think she's totally ready for it, but
if the expectation was going to get to her, it would have happened by now, like in a previous Roland Garros.
I think so. Or like, if she plays Ostapenko in a 4th round, that would be kind of interesting.
But yes. By the way, for those who may be listening back to this on audio, I realize I've not framed that question very well for you. The question was, who is Swiatek's biggest rival for the French Open title? So Vance, your summary answer to that is probably still Sabalenka, but more likely Swiatek herself.
Yeah.
Okay. Wanted to catch that one. Right. So before we wrap up Rome, I wanted to ask you, which do you think was the best match, or at least the match you most enjoyed from the women's draw in Rome?
In Madrid, there were a lot of options. Like, we were spoiled for options. But in Rome, I think there were certainly fewer of them. But if I had to pick one, It might be one of the earlier rounds.
Okay.
Maybe, you know. It was fun watching Swiatek and Kerber play a really good match. You know, it's funny, like Kerber really pushed Swiatek harder than most of the players really did this week. So that was a fun match to watch, and it made me think like, Kerber could do something in the grass court season. Like she could be a real contender, dark horse, that kind of thing.
You wouldn't rule Kerber out on grass, that's for sure. For me, it'd be Sabalenka Svitolina. That match was so good.
Yeah.
Like so many great hitting from both. Svitolina again kind of has woken up a bit this tournament. Like she's had a bit of a tough post-Australian Open, but this is she's back to the Svitolina that we've been used to seeing in the last year. And she really took it to Sabalenka, and it got really tight for Arena, and it went down to the wire. It was fantastic to watch. So
I would agree with that.
Big roller coaster.
Yeah, I missed like quite a bit of that second set, and some of the third, but the end was really, really good. Like, definitely, I think that's going to be most people's pick for sure. Svitolina Sabalenka.
Sonny producer's pick.
Yeah, I think that would be the one.
All right. Well, we are going to look ahead. So for those of you watching, we're not going to do a Roland Garros preview here, full one. You're going to see some preview action over the course of the week. So I've been teasing my power ranking video where I kind of look at who I think has got the best form going into the French Open. We'll probably do a live draw show on the channel when the Roland Garros draw comes out. And there will be WTA Weekly and ATP Weekly episodes to do a full preview once the draw is out. We've all had time to process it. So keep an eye on the channel for those. If you are new, and I know there's a lot of you here, if you are new, then please subscribe and you'll get let know when those videos come out if WTA tennis is your bag. If it's not, even like if you want to watch ATP stuff, we've got ATP Weekly coming up at some point this week to wrap up the ATP draw in Rome. We will be bringing you all kinds of updates from all the draws ahead of Roland Garros and all the events this week. But for now, we want to do the immediate term preview because there is going to be some WTA tournaments happening this week. And the biggest event is, of course, the 500 happening in Strasbourg, which is not only big because obviously it's a 500, so there's some big points on offer. But Strasbourg has been proven to be an interesting tournament in the lead up to Roland Garros. And of course, it's big because we will be there and we will be bringing you so many updates from behind the scenes, press conferences, interviews. This is the place to come for Strasbourg content if you want it. So keep an eye on that. But I wanted to start talking about Strasbourg a bit here to get people hyped for that. I mentioned this a little bit in my preamble, Vanch, but how important will this event in Strasbourg be for players trying to get momentum for Roland Garros?
It will. Like somebody like, I think Barbara Krejcikova, it could be a big tournament for her if she gets her momentum going. She won this thing 3 years ago. She hasn't gotten many matches in. She's coming back from injury. So it feels important for someone, even like a Haddad Maya, want to get matches in, build up that form, fitness. I think that could be good. It seems like Navarro is playing almost every week. She was in another final again.
Is she like the WTA Andre Rublev at this rate?
Kind of, yeah. But for her, it makes sense because she's still quite new to the tour and she just kind of wants to build that experience up to where she feels most confident, and like she hasn't had any clay court experience before this, apart from green clay. So I kind of get it from her, but yeah, and then maybe like a Sloane Stephens as well, She usually turns up for Roland Garros. She makes a lot of fourth rounds, quarters. Maybe if she got some momentum going here, that would be quite good. And it's also quite good for like someone like Vondrousova, right? You got the Wimbledon points coming up. Also, we know how well she can play on the surface. And since Stuttgart, she probably hasn't had as many matches as she wants, and she is the number 1 seed here. So,
yeah, you've hit all the big players that are worth noting and following through this draw. Vondrousova is the top seed after accepting a wild card. I didn't think she was playing. It feels like I thought she withdrew and then changed her mind and came back in. But I don't know. I think I may have seen another player. Pegula was due to play, but she's pulled out. Doesn't look like she's playing Roland Garros at this rate.
Doesn't look like it. No, so the first half of the year was a bit of a washout for Pegula, apart from Miami and Charleston.
Yeah. But It's interesting. James is saying he thinks Strasbourg will have a little impact. I'm pretty sure Svitolina won the tournament last year and ended up giving her a bit of a boost in the run-in to Roland Garros, getting her to the quarterfinals. Krejcikova, I think Krejcikova, was it Strasbourg Krejcikova won the year she won Roland Garros?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm coming from. Is the winner tends to have a deep run at the French. And now it's 500. That might be harder to do because it's going to be a bit of a battle, but I could see that being the case again. And actually, when I've done my draw bracket for it, I actually did have Krejcikova coming through and winning it.
Interesting. Yeah, she could really use something good this year because since Australia, she's struggled with the injuries, and then she is a name that you kind of circle, this time of the year. She should kind of be in that sub mix, if you like. So yeah, I mean, tough first round against Samsonova, who's just kind of very hot and cold. You never know what to really expect. But why not? Why not her, to be honest?
Why not? Well, not other players. Like pretty much anyone you mentioned could do it. Halep Meyer, Vondrousova, Svitolina defending her title would not be a surprise to me. She's the other one to keep an eye on. We have had some results today. So Kalinina knocked out Pavlyuchenkova, who was a player I thought was going to do well. Leylah Fernandez is playing, loves it on the clay. That's someone who could, make a difference. I didn't see the match, but it looks like she had a very hard-fought comeback with Potapova.
Yeah, I didn't see it either. She seems to have a good record against Potapova. She can redirect a lot of that power and the lefty game that took her to the quarters of the Roland Garros 2 years ago, where she had that foot injury. So, yeah, good progress for her. Hopefully, she can convert it into a deepish run somewhere in a big tournament soon. But yeah, this week could be important for her as well. Krejcikova, Navarro. Yeah, there's some good matches here for sure.
I think it's definitely going to be a tournament that's, if you're really deep into your WTA, you're going to absolutely want to keep an eye on. That's for sure. If you want to go even deeper into the WTA, there is a 250 happening in Rabat. However, it feels like a lot of the big names who were going to be playing in that tournament have now pulled out. So Halep was going to play, she's pulled out. Andreescu was going to use that tournament to come back, she's pulled out. I feel like that's going to be kind of a more of a standard 250 fair where it's players in sort of the mid to lower levels trying to pick up some points.
Yeah, this could be one of those tournaments where, like, I don't know, Saras Ribes Tormo or like Trevisan, players like that, who are just going to be nightmares in the first week of Roland Garros. Like maybe they go on a run here and grab some extra points.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, is there anyone in that draw that's worth keeping an eye on? You're saying, sorry, Ribes Tormo, Martina Trevisan?
I keep wondering, why is Peyton Stearns not doing better? She definitely looks like she has a game to be doing a bit better than she has been doing at Indian Wells, and like keeping that level that she had at Indian Wells in Miami the last couple of years, and like bringing it more often during the year, because she's a player that just really hits the ball quite heavy on the forehand, has a lot of power, and just seems to have a lot of weapons, but kind of week to week isn't like putting together the bigger results just quite yet. She's still pretty young, but she's somebody that I always keep an eye out for in case, because she's always played the big players pretty tough so far, but yeah, it's these type of matches that she's gonna want to start winning soon.
Yeah, I mean, like even if I would imagine that when we get to grass, that's going to be her opportunity to really pick things up.
Yeah, and the US swing as well. Actually, I think last year she did do some damage at the US Open. I think she got to the fourth round and played a tight match with Vondrousova. So there will be some chances for her for sure. But this week I was also impressed in Rome with Osaka winning those 3-4 matches that she did. I think that could set herself up well for the US swing. Not necessarily in the immediate future, but I could definitely see her going.
That's definitely going to build her confidence going to Roland Garros in the short term for sure. Yeah. But you're right. The more wins she gets, the better she's going to feel about herself going into the place where she does feel the most comfortable, which is the US. I mean, it's practically home for her at this point. So I'm looking forward to talking more about Saka when we get there. But yeah, that was a moment of like, oh right, yeah, she's unlocked Clay. It's almost like the same kind of hype when Klaverdev first appeared.
Yeah, it's very similar because like, yeah, I remember like in 2019 she did win some matches. Like, you know, she didn't totally flop it. She got to the semis of Stuttgart, got to the quarters in Madrid and Rome, third round I believe at Roland Garros. But if she just kind of stays firm in that third round to quarterfinal region at every single Clay tournament this year, and then, you know, maybe grasp with that serve, makes the second week, all of a sudden you never know, you're building momentum, and then you get to Cincinnati, you get to US Open where she's won it a couple of times, you know. Maybe there she can be one of the contenders behind these top four. So I don't know. I think she's on track. Like her comeback so far has been more or less pretty good, right? Like there hasn't been
for someone who's going to be seriously rusty. Yes, I think, and you know, when you're saying she's going to be the main rival to the top four, unless you want to make it a top five with Collins, she's the natural candidate for that, right? That we know what kind of a level that she's able to produce when she really gets going. And I don't think it would be crazy to say that she probably has one of the highest peak levels on tour right now, up there with players like Iga and Arena. But we haven't seen that on the comeback yet. And the only times we have seen it is 4 times in her career, and it just happens to be the 4 slams that she won.
Yeah, I mean, if she can, you know, she's also up there with like Azarenka, for instance. You know, that's another name where she just all of a sudden another really good week. She's playing more or less top 15 tennis this year. So she's players like that, like who I feel like are going to be in a sub mix, because the rest of the field, like apart from if you want to go outside the top 5, it doesn't feel like there's a clear standout name, right? So that's where we could see a lot of that chaos and sort of like that 5 to 30 region in the rankings of like deep runs and slams, depending on how the draws shake up. But like for now, we have a lot of stability in the top 5, which is good to see.
Yes, and that's what we want to see. I do want to wrap up.
Curious to see about Sakkari this week in Rome, and if she could go on a really big run there. And she was playing really good until that Azarenka match, and then
what happened?
Vika just
I didn't see
back. Yeah, I watched some of it. Like Azarenka was returning so well. Like she was taking Sakkari's ball earlier on the rise. She was putting her on the defense. She was the one like moving Sakkari. Like Sakkari didn't play her best match. It wasn't her best level for sure, but I was impressed by Vika and her like consistency in that match. So maybe, I don't know.
Interesting, but yeah, I think that we have, I think that Sakkari is a player that should be watched in Roland Garros, if anything, to see what her slam run's going to be like this time. She was someone I was keeping an eye on in Rome. I thought she was going to have a deep run. In fact, I thought the tournament would open up for her, because I wasn't sure how much gas Swiatek and Sabalenka had in the tank. But regardless, even if it did, she didn't make the most of it. But Azarenka was having a very, very good tournament in Rome. And Sakkari is kind of playing maybe more the tennis we expect from her more frequently. I think we can say that for her. Yeah, for sure. And then obviously another name is Madison Keys with the quarters in Madrid and semis in Madrid, quarters in Rome, losing to Iga both times. This was a lot tighter of a 6-1, 6-3 than the one in Madrid, which just totally felt like what the score says. But this one, she had 10 break points. And it feels like she could probably get to the quarters or semis at Roland Garros with a decent draw as well. I definitely wouldn't pick her to win against most of those top 4 or 5 players that we named. But like she's certainly someone who's on track for doing what she usually does. I agree. Yeah, with Keys, I've been super impressed with her this clay court season. And like she's got some clay pedigree to her, former Roland Garros semi-finalist. I could definitely see her making quarters, although she is in danger potentially of being put against a top 4 seed in the last 16 and that would probably derail it. But like a nice draw for her. Quarterfinals is on the cards for Keys. I think she has been one of the most consistent players this clay court swing, and it's been really impressive to see from Madison the kind of boost that she needed after that injury, and kind of still plugging away at being one of the names to watch on tour, as she has been for nearly 10 years now.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Well, I think we should start wrapping up. There's a couple of points I wanted to ask your opinion on. Number one, there has been some discussion in the chat about this already.
Oops. Sorry.
As Vanch needs to go to work by the sound of it. Usually what happens when my phone rings, it's usually asking me why I'm where I am. But anyway, Emma Raducanu withdrawing from Roland Garros. Or Roland Garros qualifying, I should say, because she was like 5 withdrawals away from making main draw automatically. Although, having said that, after tomorrow, that wouldn't have happened. I don't think his quality is now going to start tomorrow or Tuesday. But yeah, pulling out, deciding not to do qualifying for Roland Garros. I've seen reports that she's been practicing on hard courts in the UK, which suggests that she has shifted her focus to the grass court season. And I wanted to get your take on that kind of strategy.
It's an interesting one. It seems like she's putting all her eggs in that grass bucket, right? To try to go for another deep run in Wimbledon and get some matches where on a surface where she feels like she can do more damage. And maybe she has the matches, or she has the confidence to win a few rounds at Roland Garros. Maybe best case, she was thinking I could get to a second round or a third round, but maybe if I really start training for grass now, I could go on a big run there. But yeah, I don't know. It's not ideal for her, for sure. You know, she would have wanted to kept that momentum from Stuttgart going, especially because that was such a positive week. And okay, early loss in Madrid, but maybe she had some physical issues after Madrid, in between Madrid and Rome, and during that tournament, and maybe she just thought, no, might as well just stick with the surfaces that I'm better at.
Yeah, I mean, like, she's definitely growing on clay, and we saw that with the results in Stuttgart and the Billie Jean King Cup. But they were indoor clay courts, and they're a bit quicker, and she does prefer quicker surfaces. So yeah, and let's face it, you were talking about setting herself up for a deep run at Wimbledon. Why not? That's probably, I think, Raducanu's a player who feeds off crowds. And you know, she lost to Caroline Garcia, who was the last time she played Wimbledon, who was literally about to have her amazing second year peak in 2022, second half of the year peak then. I think that you would be talking about Raducanu as having a decent possibility of making second week with the right draw. So why not start getting warmed up and seeing where she plays? So I think it's a reasonable decision to make. I understand that the people would like the slams to be treated with a bit more respect, and her kind of pulling out of RG suggests that she doesn't value it. But hey, you know, these people are professionals and they're trying to make a living and they're trying to maximize success in their career. It's a similar conversation to why Ben Shelton's not playing the Olympics on the men's side, because he said it would mess up his US Open prep. So I think it's a similar situation here with Emma. Yeah,
and I think hopefully next year and the years beyond that, when she keeps playing, you know, she's not gonna like just neglect clay. You know, she's gonna want to try to get better at it, get more wins. She showed some good signs in the Billie Jean King Cup ties as well, and in Stuttgart, and she has won a match before at Roland Garros against Noskova in 2022. So she has shown some real results here. But I don't know. I mean, I think there is what Jake is saying here. You know, there is a little bit of like lack of transparency with the stuff she does. Mm-hmm. There's some truth to that for sure, and she is sort of going on her own path in terms of, you know, like the coaching changes, the different coaches for different strokes, like that kind of thing. But hey, you know, I mean, ultimately, I don't really understand a lot of the hoopla or fuss around a lot of it, because it's like she's kind of her own person. She's kind of free to do whatever she wants. She already won a slam, and like, I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to her and her team to decide what is best for her, and I think we should respect that a little bit.
Yeah, and it seems to be the best decision for her. We'll see. I guess we'll find out when we get there if it is. But we've got a Roland Garros to get through. And the last thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap the show up is we obviously had a lot of chat around wild cards when they were announced from Roland Garros. Now, the controversy was mainly on the men's side. Yeah. It's safe to say. So my question to you is, let's say the French Tennis Federation has hired Vansh Firmani as a consultant for wildcards. Which players would you have advised them to give wildcards to?
I mean, okay, like my original thought is like the idea of wildcards, they're inherently unfair, right? Like they're never going to be something that people are going to be fully on board with. Like, there's people arguing all the time on social media, like this person won 3 challenges in a row, why not give them a wild card, really good young player, all that. But it's like, I don't know, that's not really what it's about. It's like, who is going to generate the most maximum amount of interest, like when they play a first round match, like who's going to really help the tournament grow in terms of its fan engagement and like eyeballs in the first week. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, if we're just picking players who are from that country, like reciprocal wildcards and stuff, like I don't know if that's really a great system, like you just choose all the French players because it's Roland Garros, and then you neglect somebody like Team, and it's like, I don't know, like there's probably some levels to it, but it's like it's never going to be like totally fair, and like it's always going to be controversial in some way. Like if I choose 2 or 3 people, like I'm already going to leave out some. But like on the women's side, I mean, Raducanu, I don't know, like maybe in terms of like popularity, in terms of casual fan viewing, in terms of like first round matches that people are interested, like she is a really big name. So like I'd be inclined to give her 1 just because of
you get the TV views.
Even though she hasn't done, and I'll probably get a ton of people disagreeing with me. Like she hasn't done anything notable on clay, Roland Garros, whatever. Like, but she is a big name. So it's the same thing. Like Osaka's a big name. Like Raducanu is a big name. Like these household names, they generally get 1 in most tournaments. I think FFT is a little more strict about it than others. But yeah, like I usually like giving it to them, like people who are on their way out, who are about to retire, who have some like major finalist, major champion, like that kind of thing, or who've given so much to one tournament. That's why I think people were so outraged by the Team thing, because it's like he is a big name who's done so much for Roland Garros throughout the whole course of his career, and like he was denied that chance in his final year on tour. But so I understand the outrage, but never really going to be fair.
No, no, and well avoided with the question. I have to say, you've kind of, you've kind of got into the deeper issues behind it, and I was kind of curious. Sort of, I think you kind of answered the question behind the question, which is sort of what's your approach to it. So, like yours is similar to mine, where it's I want to give it to the players who I think have a chance of generating some engagement, or maybe even actually have a genuine chance of pulling off some like surprises. Actually, and doing something really interesting and special. I think the one wild card I don't think anyone has a problem with would be Alizé Cornet. It's her last Roland Garros. It's going to be her farewell. Like, you have to give her a wild card. It wouldn't seem right otherwise. I would also be giving a wild card to an up-and-coming young French player like Lois Boisson, who unfortunately is now injured, so couldn't pick that up. But I think she was deserving of that wild card. Elsa Giacomo's 21; she would be worthy of it. Selina Jancevic. I'm not sure if there's any sort of French teenagers. I can see there's Jenny Lim, who's 19, who's just breaking top 500. Maybe it's a bit too soon for her, but I would be going for like looking at like who the young talent coming through would be, who's that's going to be what we're going to be excited about. And then, I'd also be looking at who are the big names that are going to get TV views, who a French crowd will recognize, who so Raducanu would have to be on that list because she's a slam champion and always generates engagement. A lot of the slam champions probably would, to be honest, especially if they've had a deep run at Roland Garros before. So yeah, for me, it would be like, who could be that Ivanisevic, or who could be that Anisimova type story that we got? I don't think she was a wild card, but like sort of young player who suddenly makes a big run at the French and sort of giving them that leg up in there and making sure that they're going to be generating some engagement and selling tickets, which ultimately is what they want to do. And I know that's kind of a very cold, businessy take, and I know a lot of people don't like that, but it's the reality of the world we live in, but also the reality of what most people want to watch. And yeah, you could give it to you could give wild cards to the guys who are on the challenger, so the girls on the challenger tour, the 125Ks, the ITF W100s, and kind of have a look and use them as kind of qualifying tournaments and kind of go, right, winner of that tournament gets a wild card. That would be cool. I'd be open to that possibility. I wouldn't do that for every single one. You've got to look at where the stories are and what's going to generate engagement. So I'm kind of with you on that topic. But yeah, for me, like regardless of kind of opinion, like looking at it, I would say the one slam dunk wild card that you have to give was Elise Cornet, and they've done that.
Yeah, like that's the one that seemed like not really up for debate, but like the others, you could argue it, right? So.
But we're not here to argue. Fortunately, we're here to have a friendly talk about tennis. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Vanch, for coming on. Thank you, all of you who've been joining, who've been getting in the chat. It's been one of those active chats I've seen in ages, and that's been wonderful to see as you've all been kind of talking tennis. So yeah, I want to say again, I've done a little bit of a plug for the content earlier in the show, but please do hit subscribe if you haven't already. Get this video a like. That's how people find this show, and sort of the place where we get to talk about the women's tour. We do have ATP Weekly tomorrow if you want to get into the men's discussion, which I can see has already been started. Maybe the team topic will be taken up, and yeah, keep an eye out for Strasbourg content, as well as plenty of Roland Garros preview content before we bring you lots of live watch-alongs for the actual French Open. Vanch, thanks for coming on. Thanks to you all for watching. I will see you for another WTA Weekly episode in a few days. But in the meantime, take care and keep talking tennis.
Cheers. Thank you.
Ready? Play.
My name is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Samaz, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.